Hey everybody, this is American Marxism Part 5, differentiating the Marxists from the rest of us. Before I get started, I've got a new camera. Hopefully you can see there's a better picture quality and hopefully a better sound quality. I'd appreciate any commentary or criticism related to that or any of the content or anything that I'm putting up really, but specifically on the camera this time. All right, now that you can see my crusty and haggard face a little bit better, let's move on to Marxism. So, in our political, economic, and social systems, there's a lot of overlap in the positions, which makes it very easy for Marxists to hide from us. And for an example, if you take a look at a right-winger, they might want a small but stable social safety net or system of social safety nets like unemployment insurance. A moderate lefty, might want the same thing, only bigger, maybe a little bit better funded and covering more people. A farther left person, a good and decent progressive, somebody who's a good person, but they just see a bigger role for the state in our lives, might want those expanded or even, more of those programs, like adding on healthcare or education or, what have you. And those are all overlapped by the overarching control that a Marxist would want over our social, financial, and political lives. All of those systems fall underneath a giant communist umbrella. And so Marxists will use that umbrella, or they'll use those smaller positions to kind of hide their intent or hide what they're trying to do by claiming to be, a moderate lefty or a farther left or even a moderate righty. And so we need to be able to differentiate them out because they're a serious danger to our country. Folks who just want an expanded social safety net, somewhat larger role of government in their lives, they're not the danger. They don't want to put people up against a wall. They don't want to murder landlords. They don't want to seize people's businesses or destroy them. They don't, want to engage in a class war. So we need to, as people who are hopefully against Marxists, we need to figure out who is and who isn't one. So I have a few tests, a few characteristics that I look for. First is if they want to seize the means of production. That's definitive Marxism. They have no respect for private property. They just want to take it and do with it what they will. The next thing is they want to redistribute wealth. And that goes along with seizing the means of production. And oftentimes, if you're talking to somebody, you will see that the redistribution that they want will favor them. This kind of shows that oftentimes that they are little more than thieving profligates and wastrels and are using Marxist ideology to get what they want. And the next thing is that Marxists are oftentimes immoral people. They are most often immoral people. And that goes along with them being the fourth thing, which is fact resistant. I mean, think about it, right? We know for a fact, we have 100 years of data that Marxists have killed more people and caused more ruin than the Nazis. And if you know this, and you're still a Marxist, you can't be a good person, right? I mean, how could you pick a system that kills more people and causes more ruin than the Nazis and still think of yourself as a good person? I mean, you got to be completely insane. So either you are willfully ignorant or you are an evil, dishonest person if you are a Marxist. It's one of those two things. They can't coexist. So I look for, certain red flags when I'm talking to people to find out if they are one of these evil people or ignorant people, or if they are just, somebody farther to the left than me who wants different things than me that, is owed dialogue, is owed respect for their position. The first thing I will look for, the first red flag, of course, is if they say, I'm a Marxist. If they say they're a Marxist, they have no credibility. I, have really very little interest in talking to them. But that's not one of my big 4 red flags, because that one's just right there. So my 4 red flags, the first one is, do they quote Marx to you in furtherance of one of the Marxist ideals, like redistribution of wealth or class warfare, if they use a Marx quote as a moral authority or position of morality or as an emotional impetus to drive their argument, that's a red flag. If they defend communism, right, or they defend Marxism in general, that's another red flag. An example of this is Bernie Sanders talking about Cuba's literacy program. We have a huge body of data, decades and decades of it, that show how bad Marxism is. And when somebody picks out a single positive data point, what they are doing is deflecting from that huge body of data, and deflecting oftentimes from what they're trying to do. So if they are picking a singular positive data point as a deflection, or to ignore all the facts surrounding the system or the systemic changes that they are trying to promulgate, that's a red flag. Another red flag is that they are, generally speaking, ripe with double standards and corruption. They do not adhere to our social contract. They will claim to care about free speech, but then applaud when people who hold opposite views to them have their free speech, restrained. They talk about free and fair elections, but ignore election fraud or gerrymandering done by the people on their side. Those are all indications of low morality, and you pretty much have to be have a low moral standing in order to be a Marxist. And the last one is that they absolutely refuse to listen to the facts. They will deflect from them in any way, shape, or form. They will argue against them. They will come up with really remarkable mental gymnastics, or just balls to the wall lies, just complete and total bullshit. There's a thin veneer of bullshit in all of the politics that we do. Everybody seems to want to swallow at least a small modicum of bullshit from their favorite politician. But with the far left, the Marxists, that is more than a veneer. It is a virtual wall of lying garbage. And if you see it there, that's a red flag, right? So the big red flags for me are quoting Marx, defending communism, double standards or some other form of moral corruption, and fact resistant. If you have those four things, there's a good chance that the person you're dealing with is a Marxist. When they're arguing for social safety nets. And I think that the rest of us need to, kind of come together, recognize what these other people over here are, and the rest of us need to work together, kind of figure out what we all want, do a cost-benefit analysis, see if we can all get what we want at the lowest possible cost, and just ignore the ideologues who refuse to recognize that the cost of what they want is way too high and something that the rest of us would really rather not pay. So that's it. This is Rusting Iron and American Marxism Part 5.